Stop everything, because what just detonated across Hollywood isn't gossip. It's a controlled explosion of secrets that were never supposed to see daylight. Jaguar Wright has stepped back into the spotlight, and this time she didn't rant, she didn't ramble, she unloaded. Slowly. Deliberately. With names. In a live moment that felt more like a warning than a reveal, Jaguar claimed the industry has been quietly protecting a circle of A-list celebrities connected to Tiana Taylor through what she describes as a dangerous chain of private decisions, buried fallout, and enforced silence. This wasn't about love stories or messy breakups. This was about consequences no one wanted discussed and reputations no one wanted cracked. According to Jaguar, once certain lines were crossed, Hollywood went into lockdown mode. Lawyers activated. NDAs slid across tables. Publicists rewrote timelines. Behavior shifted overnight. Relationships ended without explanation. Careers stalled. Emotional breakdowns were reframed as burnout. And anyone who looked unstable afterward, quietly discredited. Not because they were lying, but because the truth made them inconvenient. Names like Iman Shumpert, Drake, Chris Brown, Aaron Pierre, Kanye West, even Leonardo DiCaprio were dragged into the conversation, not as accusations, but as pieces of a pattern Jaguar says has been hiding in plain sight for years. And here's the chilling part. She claims what we're seeing now isn't backlash, it's containment failing. Because once silence cracks, it doesn't explode. It leaks. And what's leaking right now threatens to expose how far the industry will go to protect itself when trust becomes a liability. The moment Jaguar Wright went live, the tone was wrong in a way people couldn't explain at first. This wasn't her yelling into chaos. This wasn't a spiral. This was measured. Calm. Almost surgical. She paused before speaking, letting the silence stretch long enough to make viewers uneasy, and then she said something that instantly changed the temperature of the room. She claimed Hollywood has been guarding a secret so tightly that even the people affected were never fully told what they were walking into. Not a scandal meant for headlines. A situation meant to be contained. She didn't start with Tiana Taylor's name. She circled it. Talked about patterns first. About how the industry responds when risk shows up where profit lives. According to Jaguar, when private situations start creating unpredictable fallout, the first move isn't honesty. It's coordination. She described a familiar playbook. Conversations move off text and onto phone calls, meetings stop appearing on calendars, and suddenly everyone is busy, but no one is unavailable. She claimed this playbook has been used more times than fans realize, and this time, it involved some of the most recognizable faces in music, sports, and film. Then she said Tiana's name. The chat exploded instantly. Jaguar didn't accuse her of wrongdoing in the way people expected. Instead, she framed Tiana as the center of a situation that grew far beyond personal relationships. According to Jaguar, choices made behind closed doors created ripple effects that touched multiple careers, and once those ripples started becoming visible, the industry closed ranks. She claimed the goal was never to protect people emotionally. It was to protect narratives. She pointed first to Iman Shumpert. Not dramatically. Almost gently. Jaguar claimed he was one of the earliest people to sense something was off, not because of public drama, but because of subtle shifts that didn't make sense. She alleged his demeanor changed before the public ever noticed cracks in the marriage. More guarded. Less present. Conversations that felt heavier. According to her, those around him noticed the change, but didn't understand it until much later. To fans, the divorce looked sudden. To Jaguar, it was the first visible fracture in a much longer, quieter process. From there, the names started stacking. And with each one, the implications grew heavier. Drake. Chris Brown. Not named as villains. Named as intersections. Jaguar claimed these weren't random mentions, but examples of how proximity works in elite circles. Overlapping spaces. Shared environments. Private access. She suggested that when situations become complicated in those spaces, transparency becomes a liability. Silence becomes currency. Then she mentioned Aaron Pierre, and the energy shifted again. Jaguar described him as someone unprepared for the machinery he walked into. According to her, what fans interpreted as post-breakup moodiness or emotional distance was something deeper. She claimed he was left confused, anxious, and quietly isolated after realizing he had been part of something much larger than a relationship. Not informed. Not protected. Just expected to move on like nothing happened. She suggested the industry doesn't comfort people who ask questions. It distances them. As Jaguar spoke, viewers began connecting dots in real time. Social media flooded with clips of old interviews, paused and dissected. Fans noticed how often people involved disappeared briefly at critical moments. Projects delayed without explanation. Tours postponed. Films quietly pushed back. At the time, these were chalked up to scheduling conflicts or burnout. Jaguar claimed they were symptoms of something else entirely. Then came the name that made everyone sit up straight. Leonardo DiCaprio. Jaguar didn't accuse him. She didn't need to. She spoke about proximity again. About how certain names carry so much weight that even being adjacent to a situation triggers immediate containment protocols. According to her, once a name like that enters the same orbit, the industry response becomes aggressive but invisible. No scandals. No statements. Just tighter silence. She alleged that this is where NDAs come in, not as protection, but as insulation. People sign away their ability to process experiences out loud. They are told it's for everyone's good. According to Jaguar, that isolation is where the real damage happens. When people can't speak freely, they internalize confusion. When confusion festers, behavior shifts. Anxiety rises. And then those changes are used against them. She claimed this is how people get discredited without being publicly attacked. Opportunities dry up. Calls stop coming back. Their emotional reactions are reframed as instability. Not because they are lying, but because they are inconvenient. As the live continued, fans noticed something else. Jaguar wasn't speculating. She spoke like someone who had seen this process repeat itself. She described how journalists sense stories like this long before the public does. Tips come in. Questions get drafted. And then everything stalls. Editors hesitate. Legal teams intervene. Access becomes conditional. According to her, stories don't die because they are false. They die because they are dangerous to publish. Meanwhile, social media was spiraling. Hashtags trended within minutes. Clips of the live were reposted faster than they could be taken down. Fans argued about intent, about credibility, about motive. Some dismissed Jaguar outright. Others said this explained years of unexplained behavior. Celebrities stayed silent, which only made the noise louder. Jaguar returned to Tiana without ever vilifying her. She framed her as someone who never slowed down during the most sensitive periods. Always working. Always visible. According to Jaguar, movement is protection. Stillness invites questions. Momentum drowns them out. She claimed this wasn't ambition. It was survival within a system that punishes pause. As the live drew closer to its midpoint, Jaguar said something that froze the chat. She claimed what she was describing wasn't over. That what the public was seeing now, breakups, distance, awkward interviews, was not backlash. It was recalibration. People quietly adjusting their behavior, because silence had cracked, just enough to make everyone nervous. She warned that more names existed. More connections. More documentation, not necessarily messages, but patterns. Timelines that don't align. Decisions that suddenly make sense when viewed together. She said once people start looking at behavior instead of headlines, the story changes completely. And then she ended the first stretch of her live with a line that hit like a threat without sounding like one. She said the most dangerous secrets in Hollywood aren't the ones that destroy careers. They're the ones that quietly follow people home, change how they trust, and never get explained. And if that silence breaks any further, she implied, the next wave won't be whispers. It will be impossible to ignore. After that warning landed, the live didn't slow down, it tightened. Jaguar's voice dropped lower, steadier, like someone who knew she'd crossed a threshold and wasn't interested in walking back. She said this was the part people always misunderstand. The fallout doesn't come all at once. It comes in stages. First, confusion. Then distance. Then silence dressed up as professionalism. According to her, that's how you know containment has begun. She described what happens behind the scenes when a situation threatens to spiral beyond control. The calls don't come from friends. They come from intermediaries. People whose job is to check in without asking real questions. Jaguar claimed individuals involved were quietly advised to step back, recalibrate, and protect their peace, language that sounds caring but functions as a muzzle. She said peace is the word they use when they don't want you asking why things suddenly feel wrong. Then she returned to the men whose names had already rattled the room, this time with sharper detail. She spoke about Drake and Chris Brown not as central figures, but as proof of how overlapping worlds create shared risk. According to Jaguar, when powerful circles intersect, silence becomes a collective agreement. Not spoken. Understood. She suggested that once more than one influential person has reason to avoid a topic, the topic becomes radioactive. No one wants to be the first to break ranks. Viewers noticed something unsettling as she spoke. None of the names she mentioned had denied anything. No pushback. No dismissals. Just absence. Jaguar leaned into that. She said denial is loud. Silence is strategic. And the silence right now, she claimed, was doing a lot of work. She pivoted back to Aaron Pierre, and this time the picture got darker. Jaguar described what happens when someone without deep industry armor realizes, too late, that they are inside a machine built to keep moving, not to explain itself. She alleged that what fans saw as emotional withdrawal was actually hyper-awareness. Watching every word. Second-guessing every reaction. Wondering who was safe to talk to. According to her, that kind of pressure doesn't make people dramatic. It makes them cautious. And caution, in Hollywood, is often misread as guilt. She claimed Aaron's sudden distance from public affection, his careful interviews, his restrained presence weren't signs of indifference. They were signs of someone being advised, quietly, to say less, feel less, reveal nothing. Jaguar said that's how people survive moments like this. You don't defend yourself. You don't explain. You let the noise burn itself out and hope you're still standing when it does. As she spoke, social media erupted again. Old clips resurfaced of Aaron appearing tense, evasive, almost rehearsed. Fans who once praised his composure began questioning it. Was it calm, or was it control? Twitter turned into a war zone. One side accused Jaguar of connecting dots that weren't there. The other side argued the dots had been there all along, people just didn't want to see them. Jaguar then turned her attention to Kanye West, and the tone shifted again. She suggested that when someone already labeled unpredictable becomes adjacent to sensitive situations, the response is ruthless. Not to protect them, but to protect the structure. According to her, unpredictability threatens managed narratives, and managed narratives are the backbone of celebrity survival. She implied that this is why some breakdowns are televised while others are quietly absorbed. Exposure is selective. She spoke about NDAs again, this time focusing on their psychological impact. According to Jaguar, signing one doesn't just silence a person publicly. It isolates them privately. They can't talk to collaborators. They can't talk to friends in the same circles. Sometimes they can't even talk to family without fear of saying the wrong thing. That isolation, she claimed, is where the real damage happens. People start questioning their own experiences, wondering if they imagined the discomfort, if they misunderstood the shifts, if they are the problem. She alleged that this pattern played out repeatedly. People on the periphery, assistants, collaborators, partners, felt something was off, but were advised to stay focused. Those who pushed were labeled difficult. Those who withdrew were labeled unreliable. Nothing overt. Nothing actionable. Just enough friction to make staying quiet the easier option. Then Jaguar said something that made the chat freeze again. She claimed journalists had been circling this story for years. Not this version. Earlier versions. Fragmented ones. Tips that never lined up cleanly enough to publish. Sources who went cold mid-conversation. Editors who suddenly needed more confirmation than usual. According to her, this wasn't skepticism. It was pressure. Legal pressure. Access pressure. The kind that doesn't need to threaten. It just reminds you what you'll lose. She pointed out how strange it was that the internet, which usually refuses to let anything go, seemed to move on from certain moments unusually fast. Breakups without explanation. Projects disappearing. People vanishing at what should have been career peaks. At the time, fans blamed timing, burnout, or personal choice. Jaguar claimed those explanations were convenient because they stopped curiosity at the surface. As the live pushed deeper, her focus widened from individuals to systems. She said this wasn't about one person being right or wrong. It was about how quickly human experiences are minimized when they threaten profitable images. According to her, the industry doesn't need villains. It needs silence. Silence keeps everything functioning. Then she returned to Tiana Taylor again, and the chat braced for impact. Jaguar was careful. She didn't frame Tiana as a mastermind or a victim. She framed her as someone whose image never cracked, because the machine around her worked exactly as designed. Every appearance polished. Every absence explained. Every question redirected. According to Jaguar, that level of consistency doesn't happen accidentally. It happens because many people benefit from it staying intact. She claimed the people who paid the highest price weren't the ones in headlines. They were the ones in between. The ones without teams strong enough to insulate them. The ones who sensed danger too late. According to her, those are the people who disappear quietly, carrying confusion they're not allowed to name. As the live stretched on, Jaguar's tone shifted from revelation to warning. She said the industry was already adjusting. Not publicly, internally. Conversations changing. Language tightening. Circles shrinking. She claimed that when silence starts getting questioned, power doesn't lash out. It recalibrates. She ended this stretch by saying something that reframed everything viewers thought they were watching. She said this wasn't a scandal unfolding. It was a stress test. A test of who would stay quiet. who would ask questions, and who would become inconvenient just by hesitating. And according to Jaguar, the most dangerous phase hadn't even started yet, because the moment people stop accepting surface explanations is the moment the real story begins to move. And once that happens, she warned, there's no way to contain what comes next. By the time Jaguar reached the final stretch of her life, the atmosphere had changed completely. This was no longer about shocking names or dramatic implications. It felt heavier, like a reckoning that had been circling for years and finally found a voice reckless enough to say it out loud. Jaguar made it clear that what people were reacting to wasn't exposure, it was recognition. She said the reason this conversation hit so hard was because too many people had already felt the effects without ever understanding the cause. She leaned into the idea of recalibration, explaining that the industry doesn't collapse when challenged. It adapts. Quietly. She claimed that in the days following her live, conversations behind closed doors shifted. Not panic, not outrage, caution. Meetings became shorter. Language became vague. People started watching who spoke and who stayed silent. According to her, this is the phase where loyalty is measured not by what you say, but by what you refuse to question. Jaguar suggested that proximity itself became dangerous. Not guilt, association. She alleged that collaborators began distancing themselves preemptively, not because accusations were proven, but because uncertainty is treated like contamination in elite spaces. Invitations stopped coming. Appearances were declined without explanation. Projects were reconsidered. She framed it as an invisible ripple effect that most fans would never notice, but insiders immediately recognized. She returned once more to the idea of silence as a tool, saying the industry doesn't need to threaten people anymore. It just needs to show them examples. According to Jaguar, everyone knows what happens to those who keep asking the wrong questions. They don't get attacked. They get stalled. Momentum slows. Access disappears. Their names stop circulating in rooms where decisions are made. It's clean, professional, and devastating. Then she addressed the backlash she knew was coming. She said she would be labeled unstable, bitter, desperate for attention.
All right, so we gotta behave.
She said those labels weren't accidental. They were part of the same system. Once a messenger is discredited, the message becomes optional. She reminded viewers that uncomfortable truths rarely come from people the system considers respectable. They come from people with nothing left to protect. Jaguar widened the lens again, pulling the focus away from individual celebrities and back onto infrastructure. She described a hierarchy of crisis response that kicks in the moment trust becomes a liability. First legal counsel. Then public relations. Then reputation consultants. Only after narratives are secured do emotional consequences even enter the conversation, and even then, only if they can be managed. According to her, people confuse image protection with damage control. Damage control would require accountability. Image protection only requires silence. She spoke about how agreements designed to protect brands end up isolating human beings. How people are encouraged to move forward without ever being given context. How confusion becomes a permanent state when answers are withheld. She claimed this is why so many public figures look changed afterward. Not broken. Just dulled. Less curious. Less open. More careful. Jaguar suggested that what fans interpret as people acting different is often the result of constant self-editing. Every word becomes a risk assessment. Every emotion becomes something to suppress. According to her, that's not growth. That's erosion. And erosion doesn't make headlines. It just reshapes people slowly until they no longer resemble who they were before. She revisited the role of the media, alleging that many journalists knew fragments of this story long before it surfaced publicly. Tips arrived that couldn't be corroborated because sources were too afraid to go on record. Editors demanded confirmations that could never exist in writing. Legal teams flagged exposure not because facts were wrong, but because consequences were too high. According to Jaguar, stories like this don't disappear because they lack truth. They disappear because truth threatens access. She pointed out how easily the public is redirected. Give them a breakup to debate, a personality to dissect, a rumor to fight over, and they won't notice what's being shielded behind it. She claimed that surface-level chaos is often intentional. It keeps attention busy while the real machinery stays untouched. As the live moved toward its end, Jaguar shifted from exposing to warning. She said the industry underestimated one thing: memory. Fans remember when things don't add up. Audiences remember disappearances. Patterns linger longer than press cycles. And once people start comparing timelines instead of headlines, containment becomes fragile. She made it clear that what comes next won't be dramatic. It won't be one big reveal, or a single document leaking. It will be cumulative. Small confirmations. Awkward moments. Inconsistencies that don't align with official narratives. According to her, systems built on silence eventually contradict themselves, because silence requires constant coordination. And coordination always slips. Jaguar closed by saying this story was never about destroying careers. It was about confronting a culture that treats people as expendable once they stop being convenient. A culture where silence is rewarded more than honesty. Where trust is treated as a resource to be managed rather than something to be protected. She said the most dangerous realization for the industry isn't outrage. It's exhaustion. Exhaustion from watching the same patterns repeat with different faces. Exhaustion from accepting partial truths as full explanations. And once that exhaustion sets in, people stop cooperating with narratives that no longer make sense. She ended with a line that didn't feel like a threat, but landed like one. She said what the public just heard wasn't the end of the story. It was the moment people started listening differently. And once listening changes, control doesn't disappear overnight, but it does weaken. Because silence only works when everyone agrees to keep it. And according to Jaguar Wright, that agreement is starting to fall apart. If you made it this far, it's because you can feel it. This isn't just another celebrity story you scroll past and forget. This is one of those moments where the industry flinches, the internet leans in, and silence starts to feel louder than any headline. Walking away now means missing the shift as it happens. Missing the follow-ups, the quiet confirmations, the moments people will pretend weren't connected when they absolutely were. So don't sit on the sidelines. Hit like if you believe there's more going on behind polished images than we're ever told. Drop a comment with what you noticed, what didn't add up, what suddenly makes sense now, because these conversations don't move forward unless people speak. And subscribe right now, because this story doesn't end with one live, one clip, or one reaction. It unravels slowly, and the people paying attention early are always the ones who understand it first. This is the kind of situation where details disappear, narratives get rewritten, and only those who stayed locked in remember how it really started. Don't be the person catching up months from now asking, how did we miss this? Stay here. Stay watching. Stay alert. Because once silence starts cracking, the next thing to break is the illusion, and when that happens, it happens fast.